The majority of golfers do not strike their irons properly. So what can you do to really compress that golf ball and get a better ball flight? So most golfers struggle with striking their irons properly in terms of like compressing the golf ball and getting that proper flight. What can they work on to improve that strike?
First thing to understand when people aren't hitting their irons very well, that's down to having a poor angle of attack. What I mean by angle of attack is how down is the club moving towards the ball at impact. People who struggle with sort of fats and thins and a sort of a high flight generally have a very shallow angle of attack, sort of almost too close to the ground too early. A shallow angle of attack is great for driver, but it's not really what we're looking for with your irons. In order to be a good iron player, we need a downward angle of attack, and we need it to be sort of taking loft off the ball, and that gives us a sort of penetrating flight and sort of a good amount of spin to stop the ball when it lands on the greens. There's a lot of golfers out there who hit the driver quite a good distance, but then that doesn't translate into good iron distance. We're too shallow. We're not sort of taking enough loft off. The ball's getting in the air too much. Once we understand that we need to improve our angle of attack, we sort of then need to look at, well, what does impact really need to look like? What should happen when we swing down? When we get to contact, we should have probably 85 to 90% of our weight on our front foot, and we should have our hands, or the butt end of the club, ahead of the ball. We've turned our 7-iron sort of 32-degree loft club into more of a sort of 25, and with a downward angle of attack, because our weight's forward, that's going to launch the ball more at like 17-18 degrees, which is sort of optimal for distance but also control. How do we get into that sort of amazing impact position? Well, what we have to understand is, in order for us to get our weight forwards and our hands ahead, we need the club travelling more from behind us. If someone swings down and the shaft is sort of outside the line and too steep, what happens is subconsciously you know that this ball is going to go low and left unless you do something to sort of shift the club back to a more normal place. People who have that sort of steep shaft outside club head is they start to back off. They start moving their weight more towards the right foot, and they start releasing their angles very early. And what that does is everything the opposite of what I've just said you want to do. The weight's on the back foot, hands are behind the ball, and that will always result in sort of either a thin or a fat strike. The opposite of that, having the club moving from behind us, which allows us to get our weight forwards, allows us to turn our chest, turn our hips, which gets us into that more sort of classic impact position where the hands are ahead, the weight's forward, my chest's open, my hips are open, and that produces that a much more of a better impact position. A good drill for that, because that was all just sort of a lot of chat but not a lot of help. First one would be sort of what I would call the stalk drill, where you basically you stand on your lead leg, you can lift that sort of trail leg up. We're just using it for balance with our hands ahead, and all we're going to do here is move our hands in behind us and then turn through the shot, trying to keep our hands ahead as much as possible. And that basically produces a punch shot where the ball flight's really low. If the ball flight stays low and the strike's good, then that means our hands are ahead, our weight's forward, and when you're doing that, you're really trying to hold this angle sort of between the shaft and your left arm. A few sort of stalk drills, what that does is it gives you a really good feeling for having all your weight forwards, having your hands forward, and what it feels like to keep your hands ahead of the ball and not sort of release the club early like we see so many people do. The second drill I like to get people doing is sort of swing back into a halfway position and stop, and from there I want you to shift your weight, move your weight to your front foot. I can lift my right leg up because all my weight's on my front foot, and then turn through the same way, not releasing the club early. If you look at my impact position on those shots, my hands are way ahead, got a nice divot after the ball, and my angle of attack's clearly down. Halfway back and stop, deliberate shift onto my front foot. I lift that right leg up just to show you that I'm all on my left foot, and then turn through with a divot after the ball. All of those shots I've just hit have gone way too low, which is fine because that's really what we're trying to do. It's quite extreme. I've clearly got my hands way too far forwards and my weight probably too far left. But what'll happen is when I go to make a full swing, my actual move won't be that extreme. I won't have my weight as far forward. I won't have my hands as far ahead. It'll just look a bit more normal and the flight will be normal. When you're doing those drills, if you find the ball's going too low, but if the strikes are good, I just won't worry about it. You won't be that extreme when you go to hit your real shots. This is something you definitely struggle with.
Thanks.
So it'd be good to see you have a crack at this. Stand with your weight pretty much entirely on your front foot, and you should be able to lift that right leg up in the air just to sort of, and then you're going to sort of just do a half swing, try and hold that angle in your wrists. Not bad.
definitely went quite low for me.
Yeah, very low, yeah. The challenge is how low can you hit it? The lower you hit it, the more your weight's forward and the more your hands are ahead of the ball. Nice.
Maybe
Wow.
I'll just exclusively hit the ball like that.
You could just do that all the way around. That's pretty good. So you can sort of see straight away the divot's good. So your angle of attack's spot on, isn't it, when you do that?
Way better than normal.
Yeah. Nice.
Maybe I just need to chop my right leg off. Maybe that's all my problem.
Yeah, no. Well, you could do. Be quite an extreme.
It's quite an extreme measure, that, yeah.
I think what people get confused, in my opinion, is they sort of think, oh, well, I need to transfer my weight. But I think people get confused about what weight transfer is. So what people end up doing is moving all the weight onto the back foot because they're sort of, the hands get too far out and too steep on the way down. They never then can transfer the weight back forwards again. Most people would be way better off almost with their irons, especially standing with most of the weight on the left foot to start with anyway, and think about turning back, not shifting back, weight forwards, big turn back, and then the more they get the weight forwards, the more they're going to hit it from the inside and the more they'll sort of strike it loads better. It might not be like the most conventional way of playing, but if you can pretty much guarantee a good strike, who cares? Golf's all about finding your functional way of getting around the course in a low score. It's sort of not how pretty is it, as much as we can all get a bit confused by that sometimes. So drill number 2, so setting up to it as normal, taking it halfway back, then doing like a really deliberate weight shift, and then turning through and hitting it. Yeah. And again, you're trying to hit this as low as you possibly can. Nice. Wow.
Feels really bizarre.
If it feels weird, it's because you don't normally do it.
Message received.
So halfway back, big deliberate shift, and then turn through. Wow. Amazing.
Find me at a links course near you soon.
Yeah.
Hitting bullets.
And what you can do with that drill in particular is I'd go halfway back, I'd stop, I'd shift, and then I'd turn through. The way you'd build that back into your full swing is don't pause for as long. So it'd be sort of, your first swing would be stop, shift, turn. The next one would be stop, shift, turn. And then it'd be, I wonder if I can do that in one full motion.
So gradually like building the tempo up and getting used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. You should then get quite a good feeling for, not like that, oh God. You get quite a good feeling for that move. Halfway back, shift, turn, and eventually you should be able to just nip it really low, which would be great on a links course. It'd be impressive off the tee, wouldn't it, if you could do that deliberately. Pretty much 95% of golfers, I would say, they don't get enough of this, like big forward lean, and then turn out. And I know that looks really extreme, but I think it has to feel extreme because most people are so back here and flicky that you can never really control your flight.